Hello and welcome to the next conversation at the Montgomery Summit. I'm Ian King from Bloomberg News' technology team here in San Francisco. We've got the pleasure of speaking with Jeetu Patel. He's a Senior Vice President and General Manager of Cisco's Applications and Security Division. Jeetu, thanks for joining us. So Jeetu, welcome to my living room again. Thank you very much for making time to do this.
It's a very clean living room, I can see. There's no clutter, and so you're a very organized man from what I can tell.
That's just what's in camera. Anyway, wondered if we could just start on a very sort of high level look at the big picture. You joined Cisco last year. You're in charge of collaboration, of applications and security at Cisco. Those businesses, I think, are very much central to what CEO Chuck Robbins is trying to do with Cisco, which is to sort of change the direction of the company to make it more a sort of provider of networking services rather than just a seller of these big boxes on a one-time basis. If we are to sort of grade where Cisco is right now on that journey, where would you say we are right now and how much further have we got to go?
So we've actually made tremendous amount of progress over the course of the past few years and moving to much more of a subscription model. And just to be accurate, it's not just around networking, but if you think about the businesses we're in the networking business, we're in the security business, we're in the observability business, we're in the collaboration business. So across all of those, what could we be doing to make sure that we provide more of a subscription-based revenue model rather than just a hardware and a perpetual software-based revenue model? And so that's what we're thinking about. And we've actually made a lot of progress over the course. We've exceeded our commits and guidelines to the street over the course of the past few years, and we've got ambitious plans moving forward. And so we still think it's early days, but there's a tremendous amount of progress that we can point back to where we know that the record is pretty good, that we feel confident about where we're going to get to.
Okay. Now, when people think of Cisco collaboration, what does that mean? What it means for most people, I think, is WebEx. And I know that WebEx is much more than just video conferencing, but as we're on a video conference today, I wonder if we could sort of start with that aspect. Clearly, a lot changed last year for everybody, and collaboration and in particular conference calls became part of everybody's daily lives. I wonder if you could just, high level tell us a little bit about what changes that's brought to WebEx, to traffic, to what you're seeing, to demand, to how you've had to change what you do.
Like many others, we've actually seen a pretty huge surge in demand on our side for technologies that can help people stay connected while they're not physically together. And so WebEx is no exception to that. And that's actually been something that we've seen an 800% increase in our video meeting volume. We've seen our, 4x increase in the monthly participants that we have. So there's a fair amount of kind of movement that's happened in the positive direction. What was interesting though is there was when the COVID crisis hit in March, we thought that for the first few months there was going to be a spike and then it would level out. And what we're seeing is there's a continued level of increase. And now what's happened is it's become more of a way of life where the future of work, the way we see it, is going to be definitively hybrid, where sometimes people are going to work from home, sometimes people are going to work from the office, and sometimes they're going to work somewhere in the middle. And our goal is to make sure that when they do work from home or when they're working remotely, we can make those experiences that are virtual 10x better than in-person interactions. If you are enabling a safe return back to the office, the operative word being safe, we want to make sure that people feel safe going back to the office and making sure that they can interact with each other in a socially distant manner and that people aren't feeling uncomfortable telling each other that, hey, there's policies being violated on that front. And then if you're working from anywhere, you go to a coffee shop, you're trying to connect to a network in an unsecured location, we want to make sure that those aspects get to be uber secure so that your intellectual property and your privacy is maintained and you're being compliant, so on and so forth. So I think from across the board, what we're seeing is there's a high amount of volume. There's a huge amount of innovation that we're making. I don't know if you knew this, Ian, but we had about 400 features that got released from September to February in our products, just in WebEx.
I mean, we'll come back to some of the details in a moment, but I think one of the starting points for several conversations that you and I have had, and this isn't just leveled at WebEx, this is at all of the above kind of thing, has been, and you have been very responsive to this, so I think people will benefit from hearing you talk about this, is for a lot of people, conference calls have been burdensome. We've had this, oh, what link do I click on? Which button do I press? And then you have 5 minutes of throat clearing of, can you hear me? Are you on mute? Oh, is your camera on? And, you know, frankly speaking, the experience hasn't been as seamless and as efficient and as productive as perhaps you would hope it would be, with the degree of advances in other technology. Where do you think we are again? You know, we say compared to where we were at the beginning of the pandemic and where we are now in terms of making that experience much more rewarding and efficient.
Yes, I think our mission of that one, I think you're absolutely correct in the sense that providing an immersive experience that's where it's easy to join a meeting, it's easy to participate in a meeting, and it's easy to make sure that after the meeting happens, there's effective follow-ups that are happening are super important. And so what are we doing as it pertains to that? And we'll never be satisfied. You ask me this 5 years from now, I'm going to tell you we're at day one, because I think you have to be, one, completely paranoid about your product, and two, always looking for ways to improve it so you can take out the friction for users. However, there's a tremendous amount of progress that we've made. So for example, the amount of friction that used to be there for a WebEx user a year ago in joining a meeting compared to today is night and day different. Today, we have just a few clicks within which you can make sure that if you've never used WebEx, you'll be able to actually get into WebEx. And so that's just and we actually benchmark this with some of our competitors and make sure that we are more efficient than they are on that dimension. Quality of video and audio is really important. So how do you make sure that you have great, HD quality video that feels immersive, where, like, I'll give you an example. I have been at Cisco for 6 months. I have met Chuck once. I speak to the man daily. He's my boss. We talk all the time. I physically met him only once, and I consider him a friend at 6 months. And that's something that's just would have been really hard to do in the past. And so we've actually gotten to the point where these kind of experiences are so immersive that you actually sometimes even forget if you've met the person or not. So that'll continue, and we've actually made a huge amount of progress, and we will continue to make sure that progress, ensues moving into the future. Because until my 82-year-old mother becomes a power user, I don't think the job is done. The second thing that we're looking at is, how do we make this? This is the world's largest experiment that happened. So during the course of this entire kind of pandemic, what's become pretty obvious is there's 3 billion digital workers on the planet. And if we can make sure that each one of them, regardless of their geography, regardless of their socioeconomic level, regardless of their language preference, regardless of their personality type, are they an introvert or an extrovert, regardless of their technical proficiency, are they a power user of technology or not, they should have an equal opportunity at that can be afforded to them. And we believe that that's actually possible as a result of what we're doing right now. So I'll give you a couple examples. Next week, we will have translation capability available in our product with 109 different languages that you'll be able to translate from. And so it'll be real-time transcription in 109 different languages. You'll be speaking in English, and I'll be able to read in Arabic. And that's something that's remarkable that we're able to do. We acquired a company called Babel Labs a few months ago, and I literally could have a vacuum cleaner on at this point in time. And if I had the vacuum cleaner on, you wouldn't even be able to hear me. You'd be able to hear me loud and clear, but you wouldn't be able to hear the vacuum cleaner at all, because what we've got is this artificial intelligence technology that segments out background noise and amplifies human speech. So those are the kind of things that we're innovating on, which are hard computer science problems that we believe will create really immersive experiences. We have gesture recognition. So you'll be able to make sure that you express a gesture like a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and that'll show up on your screen. And these are all aspects that hopefully will not only make it easy to join a meeting, but it'll be easy for people that are not as tech savvy to be able to participate in a meeting and get immersed in the meeting. But I'd say that the way that the market should measure us is, do we have one of the most delightful experiences that we can deliver to the market? And if we do, then we should get our fair share of the market. And if we don't, then we don't deserve to win.
I mean, the idea of translation, I think, is fascinating for everybody. It's been a holy grail of computer science. We've been seeing these things around for a long time, but it's really difficult. You know, I speak a couple of languages myself. I've tried all of these platforms, and occasionally they're very good and surprisingly good, but more often than not, nuance, accuracy sort of wavers. You're talking about doing something which is arguably even more difficult, which is not just a client-based immediate thing, but something that's happening in the cloud in real time as people are having a conversation over the internet. How is that going to deliver? How is that possible?
So we are, from the early studies, we've been lucky in the sense that we've actually invested about $1 billion or so in artificial intelligence over the course of the past couple of years. And so all of those technologies that we've been working on are now coming to fruition. So we had acquired a company called Voicea, and they did an amazing job with transcription from speech. So speech to text. And the accuracy rates over there are getting pretty close to human transcription accuracy rates.
Okay.
Which is pretty remarkable. And I'm a pretty fast speaker, and you would actually see that, you know, the engine would actually be able to you know, transcribe that pretty quickly. We will see similar kind of results, we believe, because of the early testing that we've done, even on the translation side. And so I believe that until you have the accuracy rates down, there's no, you know, you won't see the market adopt this capability at scale. And so you have to have, so that's kind of a baseline, you know, expectation that the market has, which they should. And we are now getting to the point with maturity in AI where you can actually start to have that be a realistic expectation.
Obviously, we've seen an explosion in the use of video conferencing. We've got newcomers come into the market. We've had some companies that are, you know, big names in technology pay more of an interest in this. But Cisco was arguably the incumbent. You just were the incumbent with WebEx. That was the corporate system of choice. How, as an incumbent, can you react to companies with sort of bigger user bases suddenly taking an interest versus startups with all of the agility that comes? You know, you come from a smaller, more, you know, relatively faster moving company, and yet here we are at Cisco, right? What makes Cisco different in terms of incumbency not being a burden and being an advantage here?
Yeah, so just by way of background, I came from Box, where, you know, I spent the past 5 years as chief product officer, and I think in the tech market, speed is everything. So if you think about speed, experience, and quality, those three things actually determine whether you success or fail. You succeed or fail. And so from that perspective, I'd say, you know, think about it. Since September, we have added 400 features in the product. 400, right? And so we aren't suffering from velocity. We have actually innovated at a faster pace. We're innovating at a faster pace now than ever before in the history of the company. So I don't worry about velocity as much. We are also doing that with higher and higher quality. And so our quality is getting better and better and better. And I think you'll see by the, you know, by most benchmarks, we're actually in the best in class today, and we're going to actually even go higher, as you see, within the next you know, kind of few months, based on a few things that are currently under works. The way to think about how do you think about incumbent versus the new disruptors that are coming in? I think it's a pretty simple formula, Ian. We keep our heads down, we keep delivering experiences that people love, and we keep making sure we keep chipping away at taking out the friction for the user. And before you know it, when you look back a few months, there's going to be massive amounts of, you know, noticeable difference that you start seeing, as I've seen from the time that I've come here. This is a different product today that we have compared to what we did when I started in July. And it will be a different product by next June than what you see today. And I think as that happens, we'll keep in mind that not all these capabilities and features people will feel comfortable exploring. So how do you make it easier for people that are not as adept technically to be able to also have those people become power users. So things like gesture recognition and things like noise removal and things, these will just become transparent features where you don't need to do anything and you'll actually find the benefit of that being delivered to the user. So we have to be obsessed on the user. We have to be obsessed about privacy and security. We have to make sure that our key differentiator compared to some of our competitors is we actually manufacture the hardware and the software.
Right.
And so when you think about the world's conference rooms, they're equipped with our devices. When you think about the world's homes, they're now starting to get equipped with our devices with video conferencing units that are out there. And those devices integrate seamlessly with the WebEx software. And the combination of those two being delivered by the same vendor actually creates magical experiences. So I think like literally, if there were one thing that we should tell our customers they should hold us accountable to is, you should only come to us if you believe that you will get the best experience. And I actually feel pretty confident that we will get there to get our fair share of the market.
Got you. No, I mean, you talked about talking with Chuck, and I've spoken with him several times in his office, and it's been a very smooth, the video quality has been sensational. It's been, like sat there talking with him. He's on a, piece of Cisco equipment there, so you would expect that to be a flawless experience. But for most of the world, they're on their smartphones, they're on a 3-year-old PC, they're on a tablet, there's a huge variety of hardware choices and platforms out there. So when you take WebEx, how much of the quality of the experience that you're talking about depends upon having that, curated, tightly focused piece of Cisco hardware there, and how much of it is going to be, doesn't matter where you are or what you're using, it's going to be fine?
It doesn't matter. I mean, so we will provide great hardware that people can have immersive experiences with. But that's not the only hardware that people will have immersive experiences with, whether it be a phone, whether it be an iPad, whether it be a computer or PC. We'll provide great experiences over there. We'll also then add on accessories to that. So, for example, if you happen to have a laptop, but it's got a crappy camera, we now have these kind of Cisco cameras that are available as well, so that you can, for low cost, put those on your computer, and before you know it, you'll actually have that being used as well. And these cameras deliver HD quality video and optimize for low light. So even if you don't have good lighting in your home, you'll still be able to make sure that you can have a great conversation, come across professional. And so I think the more important question in my mind on that dimension is, what do we do with these experiences that's going to be fundamentally different, and where is the market short right now on providing great experiences? So if you take a step back, there's some design goals that we've kept in mind that I think are pretty important. The first one is this notion of sync versus async. We have to be a perfect blend of not just synchronous communication. What you and I are doing right now is in real time, we're talking to each other.
Sure.
In order to make this happen, if you're in New York and I'm in San Francisco, we don't have 8 hours of an overlap of a day. Like, and especially if we have a global team, you sometimes will have an hour and a half of an overlap. So synchronous exchanges won't always work, and you might need to do asynchronous exchanges. And so what we now have is the ability to fuse sync and async together. You and I can start out by planning what we're going to talk about in a persistent messaging kind of application. We then go ahead and do the interview in a scheduled meeting. And then post the meeting, we might be able to go out and have continued conversations post the meeting in a persistent kind of messaging application. So we've got this blend of sync and async. That's the first design goal.
Yeah.
The second design goal is, the market's been really good, us included, in providing great experiences post-COVID for when everyone went away and went home. For planned communication. So we had to have a scheduled meeting. We were great at that. However, for unplanned communications, it was actually pretty poor. So, if I wanted to just huddle up with my team, and I've got 7 or 8 people on my team and I want to huddle with them really quickly, I'd have to go out and look at everyone's calendars. What we now have is a lot of capabilities around spontaneous synchronous communication that can be had, along with spontaneous asynchronous communications. So we've got the space, everyone's talking in the space. All of a sudden, I have this great idea that I want to talk to everyone. I just hit the huddle button. and we can all just come together. Whoever is available will just show up, and then we can start talking. There's no scheduling of a meeting, nothing of that sort. So that's the second design goal, is how do we make those kind of planned versus spontaneous communications better?
Right.
And then the third area is security, privacy, compliance.
Yeah,
Being built in.
can I just interrupt for a second, if you may? I mean, I before we run out of time, I wanted to make sure that we do talk about security, because I know Cisco offers, and part of your purview is not just making WebEx more secure, it's making networking in general more secure. That business has clearly been growing for you, and it's something that's in everybody's minds. Again, how has that changed? If we are to believe that this new sort of hybrid model of more work from our living rooms, our dining room tables is going to be the case, how has that made keeping things secure more difficult, and what kind of an opportunity is that for Cisco, please?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about work from anywhere, one of the things that ends up happening when you work from anywhere is you get on any public Wi-Fi network on your local Starbucks, and before you know it, you're accessing intellectual property from your corporate corpus. And so it's extremely important that how you go out and think about security, how you think about privacy, and how you think about compliance and governance are all kind of baked into this entire aspect of what needs to happen that enterprises need. So on the security side, there's a lot of things that we're working on around zero trust and making sure that people don't have to remember passwords all the time, and that we can get rid of passwords. That's going to be a thing of the future where you can expect us to solve the problem where in 2021 people don't have to think about passwords.
How? I mean, you'll make so many people happy, right? I mean, that's the bane of everybody's existence. How?
Biometric devices, like you can have your touch ID and you can have your face ID, and all of those technologies exist today. However, we keep thinking about passwords and we change these passwords. We can't remember them. We write them on a sticky note and it's all over the place. And that's not a secure way to be. So that's number one, is passwordless and zero trust and all of those. The second area is, I think, network and security is fusing. And so how do you go out and make sure that you can securely access the public internet is going to be extremely important. And so we'll be doing a lot around this whole notion of SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. That's going to be a huge area of innovation for us as we move forward. We're putting in, hundreds of millions of dollars over there. And then the third area that you'll see is this whole notion of, there are times when intrusions and breaches still occur. And when they occur within my organization, how do I quickly detect that happened? And what do I need to do to rapidly respond and remediate them? And being able to do that across multiple different areas where there might be breaches that might be occurring, so you can do a correlation across those, is a category called extended detection and response. And we're doing a lot of innovation in that area. And we launched a product called SecureX, a few months ago in June, and we've been adding 1,000 customers a month to that product. So I think you'll see a tremendous amount of innovation for taking out friction for the user, making sure that the SecOps professional is effectively, been provided the right tooling, and making sure that the NetOps professional, the network operations person, is also providing a network that is going to be secure as we move forward. And that ties into the applications like WebEx, so that your privacy is maintained and your compliance is maintained, all of that as well. So those are, I mean, the one last thing I'll say over here is, we haven't thought about security and privacy and compliance as an afterthought that we bolted on because our application took off and now it was doing well and now we had to think about what we do for security. It was architected from the ground up with that, and there was no business model conflict. There wasn't a question of, oh, I'm giving away some of this stuff for free, so I'm selling that data to someone else and now I have to think about it differently. No, it's like we had security, privacy, compliance baked in, and we're not confused that is one of our key priorities that we need to make sure that customers can feel rest assured about when they use a piece of technology from Cisco.
Sorry. We're going to be running out of time in a second, but I wanted to come back to some of the things that you said earlier a little bit, and perhaps end on a sort of fun note. I mean, you've, over the months that you've been at Cisco, a couple of times you've showed me some pretty surprisingly cool elements that are coming or have already come to WebEx that, frankly, I was like, wow, I wish that worked and for me, because that would make my life a lot easier. What's in the pipeline in terms of features that are about to hit WebEx that you think are going to surprise people and make people think, wow, I wish we'd had this before? You know, give us a couple of fun examples if you can.
Yes.
A way to wrap this up.
So one area that I think people have struggled with quite a bit is this whole area of, I'll give you two examples. First one is around video layouts. If you think about video layouts, when you have you and I talking right now, it's pretty easy. I've got you on my screen, you've got me on your screen, and we're just talking to each other.
Yeah.
When you start having 25 people, 50 people, the experience has become that everyone becomes one of those same size boxes on the screen. And that's not quite how real life works. In real life, if I'm presenting a budget meeting to my boss and the CFO, I'm looking at Chuck and I'm looking at Scott, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to present to them and see what their reactions are. I mean, it's nice that everyone else is there, but those are my areas of focus, right? That's not quite how video conferencing works today. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you have this view where you can configure who gets primary priority versus secondary priority. And so you'll be able to have Chuck and Scott up front, or if you and I are doing a panel and there's 50 people in the audience, the two of us will be in large blocks, and everyone else will have a smaller kind of amount of consumption of real estate on the screen. And we will be able to not only go out and focus ourselves and pin those two people saying, these are the ones I want to focus on, but I can also say, well, there's 50 people in this meeting. I want all of them to see the same view. So I'll be able to propagate that view to everyone else. Right. So that completely changes the fatigue factor that you have, how you go out and interact with people. So that's one. The second area is one that I'm really excited about. We bought a company recently. We announced our intent to acquire a company called Slido. And Slido was really an amazing company where it was an audience engagement platform where even if you happen to be with 1,000 people in an audience, or 10,000 people, or 100,000 people, how do you make those conversations seem intimate? And how do you make sure that people can respond and give you feedback while you're engaging and interacting with them? So for example, in my all hands meeting, I can ask, how's everyone feeling today? And everyone can type in a word, and that dynamically creates a word cloud. I can ask 3 questions and say, you know, are you going to be taking this weekend off? What are you going to do during the weekend? And I can ask these questions with some multiple choice answers, and I can get some data from people on exactly what they're saying. What's your quarterly forecast? Are you going to make your quarterly forecast or not? How do you feel about working at the company? All of those pieces. So that's the other area that we think there'll be tremendous amount of innovation, is taking our events capability, where we can now do up to 100,000 participants in an event, and tying that with Slido is going to be completely magical, but also with large meetings. And actually, if I can get a third one, which is really interesting, is think about our platform for WebEx being 2-part. There's employee experiences that we'll enhance, and there's customer experiences we're going to enhance. All the things I talked to you about were around employee experiences and dealing with customers. But what happens if when you actually have a contact center? We actually made an amazing acquisition recently, and we built out a whole brand new contact center that we released to the market in the cloud. It's modular, modern looking, it's gorgeous looking UI actually. And then we bought a company called IMI Mobile. The combination of those two are going to allow us to make sure that we can participate very meaningfully in that contact center business, where we're already a leader, but now with the complete cloud-based offering. So those are just some examples of where.
Could I just stop you? Will that make me on the other end of the phone of that contact center person, my experience, less painful than it is right now?
It is.
That would
it
help.
is designed exclusively to make sure that your experience as a user doesn't get to be frustrating. So for example, let me give you an example of this one. Yeah. You might start the exchange with your contact center rep on a chat session, on text message. You might then later on go to WhatsApp, and then you might get on the phone. And when you get on the phone, you get transferred 3 times. You will never be asked for the account number over and over again, because we'll make sure that we provide all that context to the agent so that the agent knows, and not to keep asking the same thing over and over again. So those are the kind of things which I think I hear the pain in your voice when you say, will it make my job easier? Because every time you call a company, your local cable provider, whatever it might be, like, it gets very frustrating. And so we want to make sure that we can take out the friction from those aspects. Brilliant. So those are just some areas where we're going to have, tens of millions of dollars of investments that we've made in just the past few months. And I think you'll see a tremendous amount of kind of innovation that the market can expect.
Well, Jeetu, I think on behalf of everybody who has had an, how can I put this, challenging experience in any of these areas, I think we're all looking forward to seeing some of those innovations come to market and help us have an easier time of it and be more productive. So thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it, and I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Ian. Great to see you again.